It started with a tremor, not in the ground, but in the sky. People across the globe looked up as thunder cracked from a cloudless heaven, the kind that makes dogs howl and birds fall silent. In the deserts of Nevada, satellites blacked out. In the oceans, submarines lost contact. And in orbit, the International Space Station caught a glimpse of something impossible. A fleet, not just a few ships, not like in the movies. Hundreds, no thousands of massive reptilian warships shaped like the spines of dragons, drifting in formation like a floating death ritual. They didn't come with a warning or message. No demands, no contact. They just hovered. Governments scrambled to respond. Fighter jets scrambled, only to vanish as they approached the coordinates. The ships were not attacking. Not yet. But the threat was real, and everyone knew it. They were called the Draconian Armada, and their legend had drifted between distant galaxies like the whisper of a plague. Stories told in fear of planets burned, civilizations wiped, populations enslaved. The Draconians were apex predators of the cosmos. Old, merciless. They believed in strength through domination, and Earth was just next on their list. But Earth wasn't ready. Not by a long shot. Humans were still fighting over politics, religion, oil, still dividing each other by color and border. The only uniting factor now was the terror in the sky. Dr. Mira Khalid, a Pakistani-American xenolinguist at MIT, was one of the first to receive the footage from the ISS. Her hands trembled as she watched it loop, scale-like ships covering the clouds, casting shadows over cities. "This isn't just an invasion," she whispered. "It's a statement." Military leaders in Washington, Beijing, and Moscow began calling emergency summits, but as they squabbled and argued protocol, something stranger happened. The ships began to fall. One by one, the mighty warships crashed silently without a single shot fired. No weapons discharged, no resistance from the skies. They dropped into deserts, oceans, forests like silent corpses. And when recovery teams finally reached them, empty. Every single ship. No crew, no bodies, not even bones. The ships were intact, engines still humming, lights blinking, as if expecting someone to return. But the Draconians were simply gone. Vanished. Mira was sent to Nevada, where one of the largest flagships had plummeted into a remote part of the desert, leaving a 50-mile crater. Even before she arrived, the site was crawling with soldiers, engineers, and scientists. No one had any explanation. "They were here," a young sergeant told her, "but they're not now. We didn't do anything. They just disappeared." Some called it divine intervention. Others feared it was a trap. The truth, though, began to unfold in ways no one was ready for. In the deep corners of the ship, hidden beneath layers of alien tech and synthetic bone-like architecture, Mira and her team found symbols, not just glyphs, words, translations, a warning. Humanity is a contamination, a paradox, evolution fueled by emotion. We could not consume it. We could not survive it. They left behind journals, not of conquest, but of confusion, observations about human behavior, war, love, sacrifice, spite, the illogical power of revenge, the lunacy of forgiveness, things that made no tactical sense, things that made the Draconians sick. They tried to absorb us, like they had with other worlds, tried to overwrite human minds, possess human bodies, but Earth wasn't like the others. Something here poisoned them. And now? The stars were silent. Across the galaxy, as word spread of the Draconian defeat, not by force, but by something within humanity, a strange, uneasy fear settled across alien empires, the kind of fear that made ancient warlords pause and tyrants think twice, because Earth didn't win by fighting. It survived by being too human to be conquered. And something about that, scared the hell out of the universe. The days that followed were unlike anything Mira had ever lived through. The world should have celebrated. Humanity had just dodged annihilation by a cosmic war machine. But instead, the mood was haunted. Not just globally, but personally. People started looking inward. Why did the Draconians vanish? What exactly did they mean by contamination? Mira couldn't sleep. She stared at the glyphs on her tablet every night, trying to decode more of the Draconian logs. The language was brutal, harsh in form and thought. It described Earth like an infection, a biological riddle that unraveled everything they stood for. And then came the reports. First, from Brazil. A team of researchers investigating a grounded Draconian skiff near the Amazon basin all went missing. No distress call. Just gone. Then in Siberia, another site. Russian troops stationed near the wreck of a Draconian freighter started showing erratic behavior. Some refused to speak. Others became violently paranoid. 2 soldiers reportedly ripped out their own eyes, muttering about the human essence leaking in. Mira was flown to Russia the next day, alongside a newly formed multinational unit. Scientists, military analysts, even a theologian from the Vatican. They didn't know what they were dealing with anymore. Not just alien tech, something deeper, psychological, possibly metaphysical. The Siberian site was cold, brutal. The ship had half melted into the permafrost, but still pulsed with life. Inside, the air felt too thick. The walls whispered, not with sound, but with presence, the way a house feels haunted before anything actually moves. She walked into what looked like a command chamber. The walls shimmered with black scales that seemed to breathe. Her translator began decoding another segment. They lie without lying, kill without hatred, love with madness. These creatures are not conquerable. They infect. They unravel logic with chaos. We entered their world and were undone by something we could not program, instinct tethered to contradiction. Mira's heart pounded. The Draconians didn't just fear humans, they couldn't comprehend them. And maybe that's what made them disappear. "Dr. Khalid," a soldier called from another chamber. "You need to see this." She followed him to a darkened room lined with glowing pods. Inside each was a human. At least they looked human. Their bodies were pale, eerily still, suspended in thick blue fluid. But their eyes were open, watching, unblinking. "They're not from here," the soldier whispered. "DNA's not human, not exactly." Clone attempts, failed replications. The Draconians had tried to make humans, to study or infiltrate. But something went wrong. The bodies weren't decomposing. They were waiting. Waiting for what? A voice behind them, calm, hollow, spoke in perfect English. "You shouldn't have entered." Everyone spun. One of the pods was empty, and now a figure stood in the doorway. Male, middle-aged, wearing a loose-fitting jumpsuit, barefoot. He looked human. He wasn't. His eyes glowed faintly gold, not like a reflection, like a fire just behind his pupils. "We didn't vanish," he said. "We were consumed." The room stood frozen. "I was the last to resist. They left me as a warning." Mira stepped forward. "You're Draconian?" "I was, but not anymore." His smile was hollow. "You broke us, not with strength but with contradiction. You love what you destroy. You destroy what you worship. You create without order. We became you, and that is worse than death." The lights flickered. And just like that, he was gone. Not vanished in the sci-fi sense. He just walked out. Calmly. Slowly. Into the Siberian cold. When the guards chased after him, they found only footprints, leading into the forest, then stopping completely, as if the earth had swallowed him whole. Back in Washington, a decision was made. The world couldn't know. The draconian wreckage was to be buried, hidden from the public. The official story? Atmospheric phenomena. A meteor shower. Cold War-era satellites falling back to Earth. Anything but the truth. But Mira knew something that kept her up even more now. The draconians didn't vanish into dust. They became human in some way, not just in body, in thought. And the universe? The universe was now watching Earth not as prey, but as contagion. It didn't stay hidden for long. 2 weeks after the Siberian incident, a leaked satellite image hit the dark net. A clear aerial shot of a draconian cruiser, half submerged in the South Pacific. No one believed the meteor crash excuse anymore. Forums lit up. Conspiracy theorists exploded. Former military whistleblowers began to step forward. Some terrified, some angry, some dead within days of speaking out. And all across the world, a strange trend began. People were changing. It started subtle. Emotional disturbances, rage fits in peaceful individuals, hyper-empathy in others. A growing number of people began reporting vivid dreams of strange places, alien landscapes, giant dragon-like ships drifting through blood-colored skies. And always, a voice whispering, "We see you now." Mira kept her head down, but her inbox was a battlefield. Military brass demanding her silence, private research groups offering her millions, and strangers begging her to explain what was happening to them. The Vatican's representative, Father Armand, called her at 3 a.m. one night. He sounded terrified. "There is something in the Vatican archives," he said, "a prophecy, ancient, written before Christ. It speaks of creatures from beyond the stars, those who devour without teeth, who burn without flame. And it ends with this: the beasts shall enter man, and the heavens shall close their eyes." She didn't know what disturbed her more, the prophecy or the fact that she wasn't surprised anymore. Then came the New York incident. It was a quiet Sunday morning when it happened. Times Square filled with tourists. At 10:43 a.m., dozens of people stopped moving, just froze mid-stride. Their eyes rolled back. Then, in unison, they began to scream in a language no human had ever spoken. Draconian. It lasted 4 minutes. 46 people collapsed. 13 died from brain hemorrhages. And one, the only one who survived conscious, was a boy. 9 years old. Name: Matteo Lin. Born in Queens. No history of trauma, disease, or mental instability. When Mira was brought in to interview him, he was quiet. Calm. Too calm. She leaned forward. "Matteo, do you know why you're here?" He looked at her with those deep brown eyes, and something behind them didn't belong. "Because you're not ready," he said. "Ready for what?" He smiled. "To become what they saw in you." She felt the chill crawl down her spine. Mira stepped out of the room and called her colleague from the Siberian mission, Dr. Hassan Nwosu, who was now stationed at the African Union's new alien research bunker in Nigeria. He didn't sound surprised by the incident. In fact, he sounded resigned. "You think this is the first?" he asked. "There have been over 60 similar events globally, some covered up, some not. You're saying the Draconians infected us?" "No," Hassan replied. "Worse, they tried to become us and failed. But something stayed behind, something half them, half us. And now it's waking up." Governments began pulling strings in secret. A coalition was formed, unofficial, cross-border, off-grid. The Eclipse Protocol. Mira was drafted in as lead translator and cultural theorist. The goal? Track, isolate, and understand any human showing signs of draconian residue. But even Mira wasn't prepared for what she found next. One of the victims of the New York incident, a man named Philip Connors, had survived but entered a coma. His brain scans showed activity patterns unlike anything recorded before. Erratic, non-human neural webs. But that wasn't the real discovery. Inside his bloodstream were nanostructures, organic metallic compounds of draconian origin. Alive. Replicating. Not killing him. Rewriting him. They weren't infecting humanity to destroy it. They were turning humanity into something else, a bridge. And if that was true, the Draconians might not have vanished at all. They might be watching through our eyes. The first confirmed transformation happened in Lagos. A woman named Amaka Ogundele, 32 years old, an accountant with no military or scientific background, collapsed in the middle of her office. By the time paramedics arrived, her skin was seared with glowing lines, deep beneath the flesh, like something underneath had turned her veins into circuits. Her co-workers swore her eyes lit up white as she screamed in a voice that shook the glass windows. The same phrase, the same language, draconian. By the time the Eclipse protocol had reached the scene, Amaka was already gone. Her body wasn't missing. It was there, but it wasn't her anymore. Blood samples turned up the same nanostructures Mira had seen in New York. The team isolated a strange pattern in the cells, something that looked like a bootloader, as if a code was being activated. Slowly, patiently. Mira stood in the Eclipse HQ, which had now been moved underground to a reinforced facility in Greenland. The only place deemed clean after a full orbital sweep. Screens lined the wall, maps glowing red across different cities, reports stacking in every hour. She stared at the largest map, a global overlay that tracked behavioral spikes. 53 confirmed, said General Varga, the Eclipse commander. His face was pale, his hands shaking despite the layers of cold steel in his voice. 24 suspected. Spread is accelerating. But how? Mira asked. We haven't been attacked. No energy weapons, no armies. They didn't even launch a real invasion. They didn't need to, he replied. You said it yourself. They failed to conquer us because of something they couldn't process, our contradiction. But what if they found a workaround? Mira turned toward the glass chamber behind her, where Philip Connors was still hooked to machines. His eyes fluttered now when someone spoke Draconian near him, as if the language itself activated something deeper. They're hijacking the human soul, she whispered. What? Not literally, but close. They're rewriting instinct, merging logic and chaos, turning humans into hosts for a cognitive hybrid, part human, part draconian. Why? She hesitated, then finally said what she'd feared all along. Because they need us. Because whatever they saw in us, love, madness, contradiction, it terrified them. But it also fascinated them. And now, they're trying to become us, but better, stronger. Father Armand stepped into the room just then, holding a thin, ancient parchment. His expression was tight with dread. You need to see this. The scroll he unrolled looked more like something out of a myth than science, until Mira saw the symbols, not quite draconian, but close. Babylonian, she said slowly. No, pre-Babylonian. Sumerian, maybe? He nodded. We found this buried in the Vatican's forbidden archive. It talks of the sky serpents, beings from the black flame who tried to steal man's soul, but the soul was corrupted, infected with paradox. It broke them. Mira touched the scroll. This isn't prophecy, it's memory, a warning from a civilization before us, maybe even before written history. She looked up at the room. The eclipse symbol flashed on every screen. New reports from Australia, Norway, and Kenya. More transformations, more disappearances, more people waking up speaking in a voice not their own. They're not invading us, she said. They're incubating, preparing us for something, or maybe preparing themselves through us. And then, as if in agreement, the chamber behind her went dark. Philip Connor's vitals flatlined. For a second, everyone froze. Then the lights exploded. Mira was thrown back. Shards of glass rained across the room. Screams echoed. Security flooded in. But it wasn't Philip lying in that chamber anymore. It was something else. Tall, reptilian, human, alien, scaled skin under a human skeleton, golden eyes glowing like fire in a cave. And it looked directly at Mira as if it had known her forever. "I am the first," it said. Its voice was all of them. Male, female, alien, child. "The bridge is complete. The stars are watching." And then it vanished in a pulse of energy that shorted every system in the facility. All across the sky that night, strange lights danced across Earth's atmosphere. The stars weren't just watching, they were reacting. 2 hours after the escape, the entire eclipse facility was in lockdown. Backup generators groaned to life, flickering with unstable power. No one knew what that thing had done before it vanished, but whatever it was, it left a psychic scar behind. Soldiers stood tense in corridors, fingers on triggers. Scientists whispered of hallucinations, voices from nowhere. Some were weeping, others smiling for no reason at all. Mira sat slumped in the debriefing room, blood drying on her temple from the explosion. She held the ancient parchment in her lap, fingers tracing the faded symbols like a prayer. The words burned in her mind now. "The beasts shall enter man, and the heavens shall close their eyes." She looked up as General Varga and Father Armand entered. Behind them came Dr. Hassan, face pale as bone, dragging a rolling screen covered in real-time data. "They're calling it the ascension phenomenon," Hassan said quietly. "We've confirmed 7 more emergences in the last 90 minutes. No patterns, no common genetic markers. It's choosing at random." "No," Mira said. "Not random. It's choosing humans who've already broken somehow." "What do you mean?" asked Armand. Mira stood, voice low. "The contradictions. It's always been about the contradictions. Love twisted by betrayal, hope strangled by grief. These people, Amaka, Philip, the boy in New York, they weren't just ordinary. They were fractured, torn, and somehow the draconian residue used that as a door." She paused. "Number, not a door. A womb." The room went silent. Varga rubbed his face like he was trying to wipe the whole reality off it. "What are we dealing with here, Doctor? You need to speak plainly." Mira swallowed hard. "They failed to override us directly, so they left fragments, biological, mental, maybe even psychic, in the wreckage. Seeds. And now those seeds are growing inside people, using our own emotions, our damage, as nutrients." "So these creatures," Varga asked, "they're what? Hybrids?" "No," Hassan said before Mira could speak. "They're new life forms, not human, not draconian, something post-human, the next evolutionary step, but not chosen by nature, chosen by invasion." Father Armand looked like he was going to be sick. "And it's spreading?" Mira nodded. "Fast." Hassan turned on the screen behind him. "We've compiled every incident and laid them over a star chart." The map glowed. At first, Mira didn't get it. Then it hit her like a stone to the chest. The emergences on Earth were forming a constellation, and not just any. The draconian sigil, a shape mirrored in their ships, their language, even their DNA helix markers. It wasn't a map of infection. It was a beacon. "They're sending a signal," Mira whispered. "A message to the stars." Varga cursed under his breath. "To what? Reinforcements?" "No," said Hassan grimly. "To others. Whoever else they failed to conquer. Whoever else might be listening, or worse, to warn them, or invite them." Mira stared at the glowing pattern, stomach turning. "It's not about Earth anymore. It never was. Earth was just the first place they couldn't assimilate. The first place where the infection took root instead of dying. That scared them. So now they're watching us. Father Armand backed away. The heavens, closing their eyes. Maybe not out of horror. Maybe out of fear. Because if the Draconians couldn't control us, and now we're merging into something new, something they accidentally created, then maybe humanity was no longer the virus. Maybe we were the plague. Suddenly, sirens blared again. Another breach. This one in Antarctica. The camera feed sputtered to life. Snow blew across a dark mountain range. In the middle, a figure stood, barefoot in the cold, wearing only a tattered hospital gown. Human. Until it looked up. Eyes glowing gold, and behind it, the snow parted like mist. Something enormous shifted, scaled, breathing. A draconian war beast, alive, kneeling before the human form, the feed cut out, and the silence that followed wasn't just silence. It was awe, dread, worship. The stars weren't holding their breath anymore. They were bowing. The Antarctic breach changed everything. Not just for Eclipse, but for every government, every scientist, every religious leader still clinging to their old understanding of the world. For months, they'd all operated under a single terrifying assumption, that humanity had been infected, overtaken, transformed. But now, it looked like humanity was ascending, and the universe was kneeling to it. The footage leaked within 6 hours. Despite Eclipse's best efforts to scrub it, it spread like wildfire. A human figure standing in the center of an Arctic storm, calm and barefoot, while a creature large enough to crush tanks bowed its massive scaled head in submission. That image tore through the world, and people responded in two terrifyingly different ways. Some panicked. Governments activated sleeper protocols, emergency shelters were stocked, underground bunkers lit up. Religious cults declared it the apocalypse and began ritual suicides. Wall Street crashed. Riots bloomed like cancer in cities already cracking under stress. But others? Others fell to their knees. They called it the becoming. The moment humanity stopped being what it was, flawed, fractured, primitive, and became something more. Online forums turned into congregations. People began offering themselves to the ascension, standing in freezing weather, starving themselves, whispering in tongues they didn't understand, begging for the gods within to awaken. Mira watched it all from Eclipse Command, her eyes sunken and red, her voice hollow from exhaustion. "This isn't just contagion," she said. "It's belief now. Voluntary infection. They want it." General Varga leaned against the reinforced glass wall, face pale and gaunt. "We've lost the narrative." "No," Hassan said grimly. "We've lost control of the species." They'd been monitoring dozens of emergence sites. But after Antarctica, the pattern changed. No more randomness. The beacons were activating in sequence now, each one lighting up like a step in a cosmic ritual. And when 5 were lit, something began to form in orbit. Not a ship. Not yet. But a structure. A massive lattice of energy stretching in the upper atmosphere, cloaked to satellites, but visible to specialized infrared. It wasn't built by humans, not even by draconian standards. It was being grown. The working theory? A cocoon. Earth itself was becoming the birthing chamber for something new, a hybrid consciousness, a post-human entity. And it had a timeline. 13 beacons, 13 emergence points. The 6th had just awakened in Nairobi. Mira stood over the holographic projection, arms crossed. "If we let this finish, we won't be human anymore. Not in body, not in thought. Whatever they're creating, it'll think like us, but it won't be us." Hassan frowned. "You're assuming that's a bad thing." She turned sharply. "You're not seriously— Think about it," he cut in. "War, greed, hatred. We destroy ourselves faster than any alien could. Maybe this change, Is evolution finally forcing us to grow up? By losing what makes us human? Maybe we already lost it. Maybe the Draconians saw it clearer than we ever did. And maybe that's why they couldn't survive it. Varga banged his fist on the table. Enough! We're not here to debate philosophy. We need to stop that thing in orbit before it finishes whatever the hell it's doing. Mira stared at the star map again. She knew what was coming. 13 emergence points. 13 awakenings. 13 vessels to carry whatever this new humanity was going to be. She exhaled. We have to go back to the source. The crash sites, number. The one that never crashed, the flagship in Nevada. The one that fell first. It's where all this started. If there's a failsafe, any way to stop this, it'll be buried in there. They launched the operation under the cover of darkness. 3 helicopters, 1 containment transport, 24 Eclipse operatives, Mira, Hassan, and Armand on board. As the Nevada desert loomed beneath them, Mira felt her pulse tighten. She could feel it now, all of it, like a low hum in her bones. The awakening wasn't just happening around her, it was whispering to her, calling her by name. The Nevada desert stretched beneath them like the scorched skin of a dying world. Nothing moved for miles, except the wind whipping up sand around blackened craters and the massive, silent corpse of the Draconian flagship, half buried in red dust. It loomed like a fossilized god. The Eclipse convoy landed a full mile out. No one trusted going any closer until the perimeter was scanned again. The last time they'd breached this wreck, no one understood what they were really dealing with. Now they knew better. Mira stepped off the transport first, the wind clawing at her coat, grit stinging her cheeks. The air tasted different here, too still, like a breath held too long. Armand stood beside her, crossing himself silently. Feels like a grave, he muttered. No, Mira said, a womb. Hassan joined them with a SAT case already glowing. Thermal readings inside the ship are rising. Same pattern as the emergence points. Something's waking up in there. The Eclipse squad moved in tight formation towards the ship's entrance, now half collapsed under rust-colored rock. The metallic ribs of the hull jutted up like claws. As they breached the threshold, lights flickered to life deep inside, faintly green, pulsing like heartbeats. Mira felt it immediately. A pressure behind her eyes. A memory that wasn't hers. She stumbled forward, then straightened. I know this corridor. Varga turned sharply. You've never been this deep inside. I don't need to, she said hollowly. It's in me. The ship was no longer just a relic. It was communing with her. As they reached the inner sanctum, a spiraling chamber with a high dome ceiling, they found what they hadn't seen before. Not during the first breach, not on any scans. A throne, not a seat, not a control panel. A throne grown from black organic material, scaled, twisting, carved with symbols that bled light, and sitting atop it was a body, or what was left of one. It was human, mostly. Dried skin stretched over bone, hair long gone, eyes empty. But the skull was elongated, the arms unnaturally long, the fingers split into 3. A perfect midpoint between human and Draconian. Mira stepped forward, her voice cracking. My God, it was a prototype. The first what? Varga asked. She turned slowly, eyes wide. The first of us. The body stirred. Everyone froze. It didn't breathe. It didn't blink, but its head tilted just slightly, toward Mira. The voice wasn't spoken aloud. It was inside them. You have come to claim your inheritance. Varga raised his rifle. Back the hell off. Mira didn't move. Her heart thundered. You're the seed, she whispered. I was the failed one, it answered, the first to carry the weight of your chaos. I broke, but I carried the code forward, in silence, in decay, until the others arrived, and now they are blooming. The 13 shall rise. You are the 13th. No, she breathed. That's not possible. But the truth slid into her like a knife of light. The whispers, the dreams, the fluency she had with draconian language, the way the ships responded to her, the pull toward this moment. She wasn't studying the emergence. She was one. Armand backed away in horror. She's the final vessel. Hassan looked at her, not with fear, but awe. Mira, you've been chosen since the beginning. The throne pulsed. The ship groaned around them, and Mira felt herself changing. Not physically, not yet. But her thoughts widened, stretched. She could feel the other 12 across the globe, their minds like distant fires, waiting for her. She could also feel them, the stars, watching, silent, terrified, not of war, but of what Earth had become, what she had become. I can stop it, she said suddenly. Everyone stared. I can shut down the signal, collapse the emergence grid, but only from within. Varga raised his weapon. I'm not letting you walk into that throne and finish whatever they started. You don't have a choice, she said softly. It's already inside me. Hassan stepped forward, placing a trembling hand on her shoulder. You can still come back? She looked him dead in the eyes. I don't know. And then she sat. The throne didn't resist. It welcomed her. The chamber exploded in light, and in orbit the growing cocoon flickered, paused, and something looked back. She didn't scream. She expected pain, expected her body to twist, to tear apart under the weight of what was awakening. But as she sank into the throne, it was like being submerged in warm water. The ship itself pulsed beneath her, humming with a rhythm that wasn't mechanical. It was biological. It was hers. Mira's eyes rolled back, and suddenly she wasn't in Nevada anymore. She wasn't even on Earth. She stood in the center of an endless black expanse, stars swirling above her like the veins of some sleeping god. And around her, 12 others, not bodies, not quite. Human silhouettes made of smoke and golden fire. The other vessels, the ascended 12. They all turned toward her, and she understood instantly. She was the key, the final node, the 13th mind. Without her, the bridge would never be whole. Why me? She asked into the dark. The 12 answered not with words, but with a collective thought that poured through her like molten glass. Because you never truly belonged to your species. You questioned, you doubted, you loved and broke and kept going. You carried contradiction like a crown. You were always the anomaly, the final mirror in which the stars would see themselves, and flinch. She fell to her knees in that cosmic realm. Her chest ached. I didn't want this. And yet you came. The stars above them dimmed. She looked up. Something enormous loomed at the edge of the void now. Not a creature, not a ship, a civilization, a council of watchers, alien empires that had long outlived their homeworlds, titans of reason and logic, and all of them had turned their gaze toward Earth, waiting to see if the Draconians' failed invasion had birthed a mistake, or a monster. Mira stood again, not as a woman anymore, but as something vast and infinite. Her mind was spread across the planet, across the orbiting cocoon, inside every awakening soul. She felt humanity, not just their actions, but their core. She felt the man kissing his dying wife in a hospital, the child stealing food to keep her brother alive, the killer who wept when no one else was looking, the contradiction, the beauty, the chaos, and she chose. Inside the cocoon in orbit, something shattered. The light turned red. On Earth, all 13 emergence points pulsed, then went dark. Across the stars, Thousands of listening species heard only silence. No signal, no new god, no apocalypse. Mira had collapsed the beacon, severed the transformation before the bridge could complete. Earth would not ascend. It would remain human. But the cost. Back in the Nevada wreck, Mira's body sat lifeless on the throne, eyes open, glowing faintly. Her heart had stopped, brainwaves flat. Varga stood beside Hassan and Armand, staring in stunned silence. "Did she do it?" Varga asked. The ground stopped humming. The ship went cold. And in the sky above them, the unnatural cocoon shattered into fragments of starlight, fading harmlessly into the atmosphere like a billion dying fireflies. "She did," whispered Hassan. But it wasn't over. Because 3 days later, in a small village in Nepal, a woman woke up from a fever dream, speaking perfect Draconian. In Lagos, a blind man began painting galaxies no telescope had ever captured. And in the dead of space, beyond the reach of human satellites, a rogue planet shifted course, heading toward Earth. The stars had closed their eyes for a moment, but they weren't done watching. And Earth? Earth had changed. Because now the universe didn't fear us as prey. It feared us as something worse. The infection that could think, the mistake that could choose, the species that said no. They came without warning. One moment Earth was ordinary, airplanes in the sky, people shouting into phones, dogs barking in suburban streets. The next, it cracked open with fire. Clouds turned black like bruised skin, and the stars blinked out behind colossal shapes descending from the atmosphere. The Empire had found Earth, not with curiosity or diplomacy, with firepower. They didn't ask questions. They didn't send diplomats. They vaporized Tokyo in 4 minutes and silenced Berlin right after. The broadcasts called it an invasion. But it wasn't. This wasn't a war of occupation. It was extermination. A clean sweep. One species making room for its own kind in the galaxy. The invaders weren't like the little green men from movies. They weren't even men. They were called the Aurochs Dominion, a race of cold-blooded, hive-minded conquerors who fed on the neural energy of intelligent species. Earth was a snack, not a threat. And yet they made a mistake. They thought humans would panic, scatter, and beg for mercy. Some did. Most didn't. Something old and ugly stirred inside the human spirit when the sky turned red. Something ancient, older than any government, any border, any god. It was the instinct not to go down easy. In New York, when the plasma cannons turned Times Square to ash, a girl named Alina Cruz pulled her wounded brother through the fire and found a rifle in the hand of a dead soldier. She hadn't fired a gun in her life. That night, she took out her first Aurochs with one shot between its blank, glassy eyes. In Nigeria, an old farmer named Kabiru smuggled children out of a burning refugee camp using an abandoned food truck and a bucket of blood to mask their scent. In Russia, a prisoner named Sidorov, jailed for war crimes, used broken chains to strangle an Aurochs soldier to death in the snows outside Novosibirsk. Humanity didn't fight with honor or coordination. It fought with fury. Dirty, irrational, defiant fury. That was the thing the Empire didn't calculate. They'd destroyed species before, but none like this. None that fought even after their cities were gone. None that bit back when they were already bleeding out. The UN collapsed in days. Armies fragmented. Command structures fell apart. But pockets of resistance rose like tumors all over the planet. Civilians turned fighters. Criminals turned saviors. No one waited for orders. Earth became a battlefield ruled by chaos and vengeance. In the middle of it all was Captain Eli Voss, disgraced, discharged, forgotten. He used to be a leader in the Earth Coalition forces, back before the Aurochs came. Court-martialed for punching a general who sold secrets to the wrong side. Now, he lived off-grid in a broken-down bunker deep in the Colorado Rockies, trying to drink himself into oblivion. But when the first Aurochs ship lit up Denver and the screams started echoing off the mountains, something inside him reawakened. Not patriotism, not duty, just raw, unfiltered hatred, the kind you can build an army on. Voss didn't rise with medals or speeches. He rose with blood on his fists, taking over a rogue militia of survivalists and outlaws who'd holed up in the woods. They called themselves Last Earth. Not much more than a suicide squad with stolen tech and buried trauma. But under Voss, they became a storm. And when the Aurochs realized humanity wasn't going to die quietly, they changed tactics. They sent a message, not to the governments, to Eli Voss. "We struck first," it said in perfect English. "But we offer a final option. Surrender now, become servants, or Earth will not survive the next wave." Voss didn't blink. He didn't wait. He sent one word back. "Try." The message went out, bouncing off hacked satellites, encoded into deep space frequencies they knew the Aurochs would intercept. Just one word. Try. To anyone else it looked like suicide, but to Voss, it was a declaration. You may be stronger, but we're human. We don't roll over. What he didn't know yet was that the Aurochs had already started their next wave. 3 moons hidden behind Saturn's shadow glowed red with activation energy. From those cloaked stations, more warships launched, bigger than the First Fleet. These weren't scouts. These were planetary erasers, the same kind that had hollowed out whole civilizations before Earth was even walking upright. But Earth wasn't just another target anymore. It had become a problem, an anomaly, a risk. The Aurochs hadn't expected resistance to last more than a week. Now it had been 2 months, and somehow, humans were still alive. Captain Voss had taken his militia underground. Literally. They'd carved out hidden tunnels below Cheyenne Mountain, beneath what used to be the NORAD facility. It wasn't safe, but it was a fortress with teeth. There, engineers rebuilt scrapped Aurochs tech into crude hybrid weapons, and medics turned scavenged pharmaceuticals into rough combat serums. Nothing fancy, nothing clean, just enough to keep them breathing. Alina Cruz had found her way there too. After hauling her brother from the wreckage of Manhattan, she'd crossed 3 states barefoot, dodging patrols, hiding in ditches, eating canned beans stolen from bombed-out convenience stores. Her brother didn't survive, but she did. And when she made it to the mountain, she didn't ask for sympathy. She asked for a weapon. Voss looked at her the way he looked at everyone who showed up at the gates, suspicious, silent, waiting for weakness. She didn't blink. He handed her a sidearm, said nothing, and turned back to the war maps. She never missed a shot. Meanwhile, across the ocean, the Aurochs were learning something they'd never had to consider before. Human unpredictability. They had studied humanity, files, patterns, behaviors, but the data failed them. How do you predict a soldier who smiles while charging a plasma cannon with nothing but a crowbar? How do you calculate the risk of a dying man rigging his own chest with explosives to take down a passing drone? How do you prepare for a 13-year-old hacking a crashed alien vessel using nothing but a salvaged laptop and YouTube tutorials downloaded before the sky fell? They called it chaotic deviation. In truth, it was madness born of desperation. In one destroyed sector of São Paulo, a group of human children had managed to lure an Aurochs patrol into an abandoned subway system rigged with gasoline and pressure triggers. 28 alien soldiers died screaming, their armor turned molten. The children wrote, "Welcome to Earth" in blood across the tunnel wall. The Empire watched. The Empire learned. They sent in their overlord next, Zocaral, an ancient war commander who had overseen the extinction of 12 lesser civilizations. Cold, mechanical, logical to the core. He saw Earth not as a battleground anymore, but a question mark. Why were humans still alive? When his ship entered orbit, Earth's magnetic field reacted violently. Tides shifted, weather patterns spun out of control. The aurora borealis appeared in the skies of Cairo. The air screamed. Voss felt it like a punch in the gut. Whatever was coming next, it was bigger than anything they'd faced. He turned to his second-in-command, a former Marine named Sal O'Reilly, who'd lost his legs in the first week and now ran battlefield strategy from a hover-rigged wheelchair. "Prep the nukes," Voss said. Sal frowned. "You planning on ending the world for them? Or for us?" "Does it matter?" Voss muttered. "They don't get to walk away. Not now." Alina was watching him, quiet. She wasn't sure if she'd just joined the last army on Earth or the last suicide cult. But then she heard it, buzzing through the old comm towers, a message broadcasted in a low, guttural tone. "Alien, but translated. You have resisted well. Anomaly detected. Earth is not what we calculated. We offer reconsideration. Surrender, and your species may be, studied. Preserved." Preserved? That word set Voss off. He picked up the nearest comm mic, stared into the cracked security cam screen. "You had your chance," he said coldly. "You struck first. You want to study us now? Here's your sample." He nodded to Sal. The signal went out. 20 minutes later, the first Aurochs mothership over North America exploded in a blinding flash. A stolen nuke, smuggled aboard by a kamikaze squad out of Detroit, reduced it to dust. The message was clear. Earth isn't surrendering, and we're just getting started. They weren't ready for the retaliation. The Aurochs had calculated Earth's nuclear capability. Old, limited, mostly buried under politics and rust. But what they hadn't predicted was how quickly humans would turn desperation into innovation. Within a month of first contact, rogue nations, warlords, and militia cells had unsealed silos once thought inoperable, reprogrammed launch codes with the help of AIs salvaged from corporate vaults, and aimed everything at the sky. That first mothership was only the beginning. 3 more burned within the next 72 hours. One detonated mid-descent over the Indian Ocean, its wreckage blackening the water for miles. Another was lured into the Himalayas and brought down by a fusion of outdated surface-to-air missiles and repurposed mining lasers. The third, detonated in low orbit by a suicide shuttle loaded with stolen warheads, blotted out the sun over Europe for 2 days. The Aurochs were starting to bleed, but Earth was bleeding worse. Half the population was gone. Major cities were rubble, poisoned, or crawling with parasites left behind by the retreating Aurochs forces. The sky never returned to its proper color. Ash and static floated in the air like a disease. Food was a memory. Water was rationed. Every child was born into a world where the stars weren't dreams anymore. They were threats. Deep in the Cheyenne bunker, Voss paced before the flickering war table, his skin grayer than usual, his eyes sunken. Sleep had become a luxury he couldn't afford. Every morning came with a new message from a resistance cell, some hopeful, most horrifying. One group in France reported children going blind from radiation poisoning. Another in South Africa sent a garbled feed showing people worshipping a crashed Aurochs machine like a god. Desperation was mutating. Humanity was fracturing at the seams. "We're winning," Sal muttered beside him, staring blankly at the feed from above Earth's orbit. "Winning?" Voss snapped. "We're surviving. There's a difference." "But we're still here." "Not for long if we keep playing their game." That's when Alina spoke up from across the room. Her voice was quiet but sharp, like a scalpel. "Then change the game." Everyone turned. "What?" Voss asked. "You said we're fighting like rats in a cage," she said, stepping forward. "So stop acting like we're trapped. You've been reacting this whole time, waiting for them to strike. What if we go up? There was silence. No one moved. She continued. We've shot down 3 of their ships. We have debris, technology power cores, navigation logs. We have their language, their frequencies. We even have one of their pilots. What's stopping us from turning the cage inside out? Voss stared at her, and slowly, something in his expression shifted. Sal raised an eyebrow. You saying we build a ship? No, Alina said. I'm saying we steal one. It was insane, suicidal. But it was also the only thing that made sense. They had pieces, scavenged hulls, plasma emitters half rebuilt by genius kids from Seoul, cybernetic modules hacked by Russian darknet veterans who now lived in underground bunkers powered by car batteries and rage. They had parts. What they didn't have was time. The Aurochs weren't going to give them a break. Zokaral's next wave was on the move. 10 ships, each larger than Manhattan, equipped with planet burrowers, devices designed to crack a world's crust and hollow it from the inside out. Earth had weeks, maybe less. So Voss did what he always did when pushed to the edge. He broke the rules. He mobilized every resistance cell across the globe, not for defense, but for parts. Every surviving technician, hacker, builder, and rogue scientist was summoned to Colorado. And in the darkness of an old NORAD hangar, beneath a mountain choking on dust and grief, humanity began to build something monstrous. They called it Leviathan. It was ugly, patchwork, screaming with radiation. Its core pulsed with unstable Aurochs plasma. Its wings were jagged remnants of shot-down fighters, its thrusters cannibalized from an old Mars mission. It shouldn't have flown, but it did. And when it powered on for the first time, the mountain shook. Alina stood before it, her eyes reflecting the crackling energy of the beast she'd helped bring to life. Voss placed a hand on her shoulder, for the first time looking at her not as a survivor, but as a leader. You were right, he said. It's time we took the fight to them. And above them, in the vast black beyond Earth's wounded sky, the Empire waited. Unaware that the humans had built a war machine out of junk, anger, and vengeance, and it was coming for them. The day Leviathan left Earth's atmosphere, the sky screamed. Not because of the ship's engines, though they tore through the clouds like a god ripping open the sky, but because of what it meant. For the first time since the Aurochs arrived, Earth wasn't just reacting. It was reaching. Humanity wasn't running anymore. It was chasing. The ship roared into orbit like a meteor in reverse. Inside, everything was rattling, creaking, threatening to tear itself apart. It wasn't designed for comfort or elegance. It was barely designed at all, but it held together, just barely, driven by sheer will and a core reactor that could wipe out a continent if it destabilized. Captain Voss stood strapped into the command chair, gripping the armrests with white knuckles. Alina was to his right, coordinating the tech crew. Most of them barely older than her, all of them chosen not for training but for the sheer number of alien systems they had hacked, rebuilt, or detonated. Below them, Earth became a shrinking marble, wrapped in soot and flame. Voss stared at it, jaw clenched. We don't come back until it's safe to come back, he said. They were heading to one of the Aurochs refueling stations, the smallest one still orbiting Neptune's shadow, where the Dominion warships would dock to recharge before entering Earth's orbit. Their plan? Hijack the base, upload a virus, jam every transmission between the command fleet and their AI logistics chain. Paralyze the Dominion long enough to create chaos. It was insane. But that's what humans had become. The closer they got to the station, the more bizarre the space around them became. Aurochs territory distorted gravity. Soundless electrical storms crawled across the void like spiders. Even time itself felt wrong. Seconds stretched, twisted. The ship's clocks drifted out of sync. One of the crewmen bled from the nose and passed out. They tied him to a bulkhead and moved on. Alina sat at the terminal, trying to decrypt the Aurak's docking frequency. "These signals, they're not linear," she muttered. "They're alive." "What do you mean alive?" Voss asked. "I mean, they adapt. Every time I crack one pattern, it changes like it knows." "Then beat it faster." She didn't respond. Her fingers were already dancing across the keys, rerouting through Earthside servers still online, looping signals through abandoned AI cores, trying to stay ahead of a code that wasn't just advanced, it was hunting her back. Then something pinged. The station was in view. A pale black ring spinning in the darkness, with teeth like a circular saw and tendrils of glowing blue energy curling off its sides. It didn't look like a base. It looked like a mouth. "Weapons online," Voss barked. "Only one cannon functioning," Sal O'Reilly's voice crackled from the lower deck. "And it overheats after 2 shots. That's one more than we had yesterday." The closer they got, the more the ship groaned. It was like Leviathan itself wanted to turn back. Systems blinked red, oxygen levels dropped, heat shields fluctuated. The stolen alien power core screamed with instability. "Distance to target 6,000 kilometers, Alina whispered. Then the Aurak's noticed. Energy spikes lit up across the station. It had no visible guns, Aurak's tech never did, but strange tendrils of light began reaching toward Leviathan, like it was being scanned, dissected, judged. A voice echoed inside their heads, not over speakers, not in any language. It entered them. "Curious construct. Unrecognized aggression. Stand down. Return to primitive orbit. You will be preserved." Voss spat onto the deck. "We've heard that line before." He turned to Alina. "Light 'em up!" The single plasma cannon charged, screeched, and fired. A beam of white-hot energy lanced through the void and struck the station's outer ring. It didn't explode. It didn't even react. Instead, the beam was absorbed, swallowed. Did it eat the shot?" Sal gasped. Alina froze. "Voss, we're in trouble. Big trouble." Suddenly the station grew. Its outer shell unfolded like some kind of flower, revealing that it wasn't just a station. It was alive. A biomechanical creature engineered to masquerade as infrastructure. Its tendrils weren't tools. They were limbs. "Get us out of here!" someone screamed. Too late. The tendrils whipped forward and wrapped around Leviathan, dragging the ship toward its spinning core like prey toward a waiting mouth. Alina gritted her teeth and slammed her fists on the terminal. "I need 30 seconds to upload the virus." "You've got 15, Voss growled. The ship shook violently. Sparks rained down. Half the monitors died. The pilot slumped in his seat, blood trickling from his ears. Voss stood, unstrapped himself, and limped toward the fusion core. "Get her the time. I'll buy it." "Don't you dare!" Alina shouted. He didn't listen. He tore the emergency override from the wall, exposing the unstable Aurak's core, glowing like a miniature sun. He cranked the failsafe dial to maximum. The core surged. "Voss, that'll blow us all!" "It'll blow us," he said, "or them." The ship pulsed with power. Alina screamed at the code, fingers flying, the virus inches from completion. Then, "Upload complete." Voss hit the manual trigger. A surge of corrupted code burst out of Leviathan like a shockwave. It slammed into the station's systems, disrupting neural connections, sending feedback loops through the living metal. The creature shuddered, screeched. Its grip loosened. Leviathan kicked free, and the Aurak's station began to disintegrate, folding in on itself, burning from the inside out. Alina collapsed. Voss fell beside her, coughing, burned, but alive. For now. But the message was sent. The virus was in their network. And in the heart of the Dominion's communication system, something began to break. In the silence that followed the explosion, there was no victory, just static. Leviathan drifted. Systems flickered. Fires hissed from broken vents. Half the crew was unconscious or worse. The fusion core had stabilized, barely, but Voss lay on the floor beside it, his arms scorched and lips cracked from the blast wave. Alina crawled to him, fingers trembling as she checked his pulse. It was there. Weak, but there. "Hang on, old man," she muttered, voice dry as ash. "You don't get to die after pulling that off." Through the cracked viewport, the RX station twisted in slow, silent death. The virus hadn't just infected the creature, it had spread. Invisible tendrils of corrupted code now pulsed outward, carried by the Dominion's own network. Every transmission, every command signal they sent was now riding a wave of earthborn corruption. The message was simple. We're not prey. We're the storm. But that wasn't the end. That was the warning. Far across the stars, on a moon cloaked in obsidian mist, High Commander Zokarl stood before a writhing map of his dominion. Thousands of systems, billions of subjugated species, his empire etched into the fabric of the cosmos. Until now. He stared at the corrupted feed, the station's last moments playing back in fragmented bursts. The human ship, the strange energy pulse, the station's scream as it died. An aide approached, voice quivering. "The signal has reached over 32% of our fleet. Some ships are non-responsive. Others report hallucinations in the command AI. A few have gone dark entirely." Zokarl didn't blink. His face, cold and angular, cracked only slightly at the edges. A twitch, barely perceptible. But it was there. Fear. "Bring me the Null Priests," he ordered, "and deploy the Vanguard. Earth dies now." Back aboard Leviathan, Alina's fingers danced through the hollow projections, checking the virus's progress. The code was doing more than she hoped. It was evolving. Every Orax system it touched, it learned from, rewrote, bent their intelligence into knots of contradiction and panic. "They thought their minds were perfect," she whispered. "Turns out a little chaos is all it takes." Behind her, Voss stirred, groaned. "You alive?" she asked. "Barely." He sat up slowly, his voice hoarse. "Did it work?" "Oh, it worked. You melted a living station and set half their damn fleet on fire." He grinned, weak but wicked. "Told you we'd steal the sky." But there was no time to savor it. A warning flashed. Brutal, urgent, unmistakable. Something massive had entered their sensor range. Alina's heart dropped. "Voss, we've got company." The Dominion hadn't wasted time. A new ship was inbound. No, not a ship. A colossus, at least 20 times the size of Leviathan, shaped like a scythe dragging across reality, blacker than the void, with red slits pulsing across its hull like breathing scars. "The Vanguard," Voss murmured. "I've heard whispers. Flagships for extermination. No assimilation, no subjugation, just erasure." "ETA 20 minutes, Sal's voice crackled from below deck. "Hull's barely holding. Weapons are toast. If we get hit once, we're stardust." Voss pushed himself upright. "Then we don't let them fire." "What?" "We board them." Alina blinked. "You've lost your mind." "Number, I've found it. They think they know humans. They think we fear death. But death's been chasing us since the first club hit the first skull. We don't fear it. We use it." He limped to the nav panel. "Plot a direct course. We hit them head on." "That's suicide." "No," he said. "It's a message." Alina hesitated. But then she saw it. That same look in his eyes from the night Earth fell. The look that said, "If we're going down, we're taking hell with us." So she nodded. They angled Leviathan toward the incoming Vanguard, and every crew member left alive strapped in, knowing what this meant. Back on Earth, the virus continued to spread. Back in the Dominion, systems collapsed. AIs short-circuited, and lower caste species whispered of rebellion. The Empire had cracked. And now, a single human war machine, stitched together from scrap and desperation, flew toward their deadliest weapon with one goal: break the unbreakable. As Leviathan closed the distance, Voss gave his final command. "Open the bay doors." Alina hit the switch. Below them, humanity's last secret unfolded, dozens of pods built from scavenged cryotech and fitted with fusion drills, loaded with explosives, each one carrying a rebel, an outcast, or a fighter with nothing left to lose, each one willing to die to make a point. They launched, a swarm of human fury, streaking through the dark toward the Empire's greatest beast. The pods hit like thunder. Dozens of them tore into the black hull of the Dominion Vanguard, puncturing its armor with brutal precision. Fusion drills screamed as they chewed through layers of living metal and synthetic bone. Explosions bloomed along the outer shell, blinding flashes against the void. Inside the monstrous vessel, alarms blared in a language meant to be heard through bone rather than ears. Organic lights pulsed in panic. The ship was alive, reacting like a wounded beast, shifting walls, sealing corridors, deploying defense drones that looked more like nightmares than machines. But the humans were already inside. From the pods came the damned, rebels, prisoners, ex-soldiers, people the world had discarded. Voss hadn't brought an army. He'd brought vengeance. Alina was one of the first out, pulse rifle in hand, breath fogging inside her cracked helmet. The corridor they landed in was slick with a fleshy sheen, dimly lit by bioluminescent veins that pulsed like a heartbeat. She gagged at the stench. It smelled like copper and rotting meat. Whatever this ship was, it wasn't metal and wire. It was grown. Behind her, Sal O'Reilly came limping out, dragging a railgun fashioned from stolen Orax tech. "This place is a damn horror show." "No time for awe," Alina said, checking her tracker. "Voss said hit the neural core. Everything else is noise." The Dominion ship began its counterattack. Panels opened in the walls like gills, releasing vapor and shrieking drones with spindly limbs and rotating mouths. They didn't shoot bullets. They screamed. Sonic pulses meant to rupture brains. But the humans had been screaming inside for too long. Alina dropped to a knee and fired. The pulse rifle howled, sending blue bolts through one of the drones. It crumpled into twitching parts. Sal lobbed a makeshift EMP grenade, knocking out half the corridor's lights and sending more drones crashing into the walls. All around the ship, other pods had breached. Small skirmishes turned into full-on war zones. Human teams moved like wolves, fast, precise, merciless. They didn't fight like an army. They fought like survivors. Inside the command center of the Vanguard, High Commander Joe Corral watched through its internal sensors. For the first time in centuries, he did not feel superior. He felt doubt. "They are not logical," he hissed. "They do not seek surrender. They are chaos incarnate." The Null priests, cloaked in black flame, whispered in his mind. "They carry death like fire. They cannot be reasoned with, only consumed." Jokaral bared his fangs. "Then consume them." The ship's neural core began to pulse harder, generating gravitational shifts meant to crush intruders. The walls bent space, disorienting human senses. Some fighters vomited, fell, passed out. Others pressed on, dragging comrades by the arms. Alina's team made it deeper. The walls grew darker, the light more intense. And then they saw it. The brain. Not metaphorically, literally. The Dominion neural core sat at the center of the ship, suspended in a vat of translucent fluid, connected to the ship's entire structure through cables and tissue. It pulsed, oozing thoughts and orders in waves of psychic force. Around it, protective tendrils stirred, massive coils of living armor ready to strike. Alina stared at it, then opened the satchel at her side. Inside were 24 canisters, nanite bombs. "Voss didn't bring us to win," she whispered to herself. "He brought us to infect." She snapped the canisters into the panel around the brain. Each one lit up, pulsing blue, primed. The virus inside wasn't just data. It was encoded emotion, memory, human trauma turned into corruption, fear, loss, rage, packaged into a language only machines could understand. And fear, that's what the Dominion couldn't process. She slammed the final trigger just as one of the massive tendrils shot toward her. It didn't make it. The virus exploded inward, into the mind of the ship. Not a blast of fire, but of thought. An ocean of screaming human memory poured into an alien consciousness built on cold control and perfection. The Vanguard convulsed. Across its decks, lights went white, then red, then dark. Every AI connected to the core, every command system, every coordination link began to malfunction. Some burned out entirely, others rebooted, screaming. In space, Leviathan, still drifting, began transmitting the same signal, now amplified by the corrupted Vanguard itself. And across the Dominion network, it spread like wildfire. Ships stopped mid-flight. Orders reversed. Commanders began questioning protocols that had never been questioned in thousands of years. Alina collapsed beside the vat. The tendril fell still beside her, twitching. Sal crouched next to her, bleeding from a gash in his scalp. "Did we do it?" he asked. She looked up, eyes barely open. "We didn't win." "What then?" "We made them afraid." And across the stars, in thousands of Dominion warships, the first spark of something terrible ignited. Doubt. The Dominion was unraveling. From the heart of the Vanguard to the cold outer reaches of its empire, cracks split the once unshakable order. Command ships no longer responded in sync. Scout vessels vanished without explanation. Entire battalions turned inward, confused by foreign impulses crawling through their systems, ghost signals, corrupted protocols, strange whispers in the dark of space. It wasn't just a virus anymore. It was an infection of humanity, of all its terrible beauty. Emotion, rage, rebellion, pain as memory, grief as weapon, and fear. The Dominion had never known it, not like this. On board the Vanguard, chaos reigned. Emergency lights flickered red and purple as the ship groaned in its death throes. Bulkheads folded in on themselves. Defense drones attacked anything that moved, including each other. The ship's own AI screamed in overlapping languages, some mechanical, others painfully human. Somewhere deep within its corrupted neural core, a voice muttered, again and again, "I remember falling. I remember burning. I remember Earth." Voss stumbled down the broken corridor, shoulder torn open by shrapnel, rifle hanging from one hand. He found Alina where she'd fallen near the core, barely conscious, her skin pale and stained with blood. He knelt beside her, pressing 2 fingers to her neck. Still alive. He breathed out, then looked up at the ruined neural tank. The Dominion's mind was dying, but slowly. It was still dangerous, still capable of fighting back. They didn't have long. Sal limped over, dragging 2 other fighters behind him, both wounded, one unconscious. "Everyone's falling back," he said. "The ship's about to collapse inward. Some kind of controlled implosion. We gotta go." "We finish what we started," Voss growled. Sal shook his head. "This place is a tomb, Voss. You want to send a message? Great, we've sent it, but no one's gonna hear it if we die here." Voss clenched his jaw. His whole life had been this, Resistance, sacrifice, one breath away from oblivion. But this time he knew Sal was right. The virus had spread. The damage was done. He pulled Alina onto his shoulder, groaning under the weight. "Get to the pods." Together, limping, coughing, bleeding, they made their way back through the dying beast. Drones screamed through the air above them. Organic cables whipped like tentacles, reacting blindly to foreign signals. The ship was trying to decide if it was still alive or already dead. Voss didn't wait to find out. At the pod bay, 2 remaining dropships waited, barely functional, flickering with sparks. Other human fighters had made it too, fewer than 20. Out of the dozens who'd boarded, most were gone. Some killed by Dominion weapons, others by the ship itself. Some had stayed behind to hold choke points, to buy minutes for the others to escape. Their sacrifice was unspoken, but felt in every broken breath. Voss threw Alina into the nearest dropcraft, then turned back for Sal, helping him up as alarms grew deafening around them. The ship was collapsing. Literally. Floor plates bent. Gravity reversed. Strange pressure formed in the air, like the whole place was sinking into itself. They slammed the hatch just as the bay ceiling caved inward. Engines roared. The dropcraft launched into the void, tearing away from the imploding Vanguard. Behind them, the Colossus folded in on itself. Not a simple explosion, but a violent rupture of logic. Geometry twisted. Light turned backward. In its final death cry, the ship broadcast a scream so loud it reached across subspace channels. "We remember Earth!" On board the dropcraft, silence returned slowly. Sal slumped into a seat, holding a compress to his chest. "We made it." Voss sat beside Alina, who stirred awake, eyes fluttering. "Did we die?" she murmured. "No," he said. "But they did." For a long moment, no one said anything. Then a voice crackled through the ship's comms. "This is Resistance Command. We read your signal. Confirmation code, Last Flame. Is anyone alive out there?" Voss leaned forward, pressing the comm. "This is Captain Elias Voss. Leviathan crew reporting in. Mission succeeded. Vanguard is destroyed." A pause. Then static cleared. "Copy that, Captain. You lit the fire. It's spreading." He sat back, eyes hollow but fierce, because Earth had struck back. And now the Dominion was starting to break. Not with an army, but with an idea. They called it the fracture. Within a standard Dominion cycle, over 72 warships decommissioned themselves. Entire planetary governors fell silent, refusing central directives. The Null priests, those ancient psychic shepherds of Dominion thought, began to self-immolate, consumed by conflicting streams of emotion they couldn't parse. A whisper spread through the Empire like cancer. "We remember Earth." It wasn't just a message. It was a disease of thought. Wherever the corrupted signal went, Dominion logic unraveled. Some systems collapsed into infighting, others simply shut down, as if their programming preferred death over doubt. And all across the network, strange behaviors emerged. Some drones stopped executing prisoners. Some ships refused to fire. A few commanders began questioning orders aloud, suffering seizures moments later, as if the Dominion itself tried to punish heresy from within. But it was too late. Voss, Alina, and what remained of the Leviathan's team were brought back to a resistant stronghold in the asteroid belt near Jupiter. It was no paradise. Steel corridors, recycled air, scars of too many battles. But it was home. Alina recovered slowly, her nerves damaged from proximity to the neural blast. Her left hand shook when she tried to hold a cup of water, but her voice stayed strong. "I didn't think it would feel like this," she whispered to Voss as they sat in the infirmary. "I thought we'd celebrate, laugh, dance. But I just feel hollow. We didn't win, Voss said, staring at the metal floor. We just wounded something old, something huge. It'll bleed a while, then it'll choose. Choose what? He looked at her, his eyes darker than ever. Whether to become something new, or to destroy everything we ever touched. Across the stars, the Resistance listened to the silence of their enemy. For the first time, no counterattack came, no immediate retaliation, no glassing of Earth, no planetary extinction protocol, just silence and whispers. Hundreds of Dominion colonies broadcast erratic, desperate messages. Some asked for guidance, others begged for mercy. One signal, intercepted from a Dominion outpost near the Trinary Rift, simply repeated a single line. They showed us what it means to break. Back on Earth, cities long buried beneath rubble began to rebuild. Skies once black with ash saw sun again. People came out of bunkers and silos, not because they were safe, but because they felt something different in the air. Hope. The Resistance began organizing, shaky alliances forming between warlords, old governments, and scattered survivors. They called it the Second Dawn. Voss was offered a seat on the Central Council. He declined. He stayed in orbit, aboard a new ship, Reckoner, with a skeleton crew, including Sal and Alina. "We're not done," he told them. "This was just the first domino." They weren't hunting victory now. They were hunting answers. Where had the Dominion come from? What did they want beyond conquest? And most terrifying of all, what was waking up in the void now that their Dominion was breaking? Because sometimes, when power falls, worse things crawl up through the cracks. On their 10th patrol day beyond Saturn, Reckoner picked up a signal. Not Dominion, not human. Older, colder. Voss listened, then leaned back in his seat. "They're watching us." Alina stiffened. "Who?" He turned to her, that familiar fire in his eyes once more. "Something older than the Dominion. Maybe they ruled before. Maybe they just waited. But they know what we did." She looked at the signal trace. Frequencies warped like space had twisted just to speak it. Not a language, a warning. You taught them fear, but you also taught them to dream. Voss exhaled. "Let's see what happens when empires start dreaming nightmares."